But right now, here's a presidential historian, a political analyst who used to have a show on KGO with the rest of us, and he is so generous to take time out to join us every Wednesday. He does his own podcast called Around the Political World with John Rothmann. It's a daily podcast. I suggest you subscribe. Here he is, John Rothmann. Hi, John.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yes, you too, sir. I'm so glad that we get to talk to you on a day following a pretty big flip of a district in New York that was vacated by George Santos, as you know.
Hey, Mark, it's George Santos here.
Yeah. So what do you take from this, John Rothmann?
Only that district on that particular day decided to replace a Republican with a Democrat. The man who won is a former member of Congress. He'd served 3 terms. He's well known in the district. He won by an overwhelming majority. I don't think there's much to take away, except that for Speaker Johnson, it's a tremendous blow. And if you listen to him this morning, as I did on a press conference that he held, he was trying to spin it as if they'd had a victory, which I found absolutely stunning. So my answer is there isn't a lot to be made about it, except Republicans should understand that the trend is now against them.
Well, okay, but I shouldn't say but. There's a lot that is being pointed to, and I'm kind of glad that I don't know if you're being cautious deliberately or you're just being sensible, that you're not, rah, 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 oh my God, we can take so much from this. But
there's no gloating here at all.
No. Let me just speak to the politics of it, though, because I wanted to get your take. What is being pointed to is the way he ran his campaign and how it might be instructive for Democrats who are running in other campaigns. Specifically, instead of shying away from the border crisis, he kind of embraced the border crisis as and the question of immigration. He kind of made it his own.
That's because he was accused of being an open borders advocate. So he was responding to what the Republicans did. And of course, it doesn't work. Look what happened this last week. A deal was cut, and who killed the deal? It was a bipartisan deal. The Republicans, Speaker Johnson. And I have to tell you, I listened to Speaker Johnson today, as I say, trying to spin what happened as a victory for the Republicans. It's inane. But the immigration issue plays in New York because, remember, part of the district was in Queens. And you have to be aware, if you know the geography of New York, what's going on there with the number of immigrants that have been shipped to New York by governors of various states, but particularly the governor of Texas, Governor Abbott. And so there is a sense of real concern. What interested me as well, the abortion issue was not the top issue because the immediacy of what's happening now on immigration is so critical. And of course, the argument is now being made that because of new restrictions, that most of the immigrants are either going to California or Arizona. We haven't felt that impact yet. There hasn't been a major story yet, but we'll have to see how it plays.
Well, this to which you refer, the idea somehow that you point to the fact that there was legislation on the table and it was KO'd because of Donald Trump, that is something that President Biden is referencing as well. And it's thought that others who are going to be in similar Democratic races for their own seats in Congress and in the Senate may use that same strategy in addressing this issue.
Not think, they will, because Donald Trump is trying to exploit it. Look, the same thing happens on the Russia issue. Can you imagine that the former president of the United States gave a green light to Russia, essentially to attack our NATO allies, to attack Eastern Europe and Western Europe? And the response of the Republicans, aside from Nikki Haley, who finally fired back, has been deafening. And the other thing that is fascinating to me is Donald Trump's attacks on Nikki Haley's husband, who's been deployed by the South Carolina National Guard, is in the Horn of Africa, and Trump's making it an issue. But he did that with John McCain as well. It is the irresponsibility. And then the decision to remove Ronna Romney McDaniel. They have a new chairman coming in who's a former state chairman who's very pro-Trump. And you know who Trump is putting in as the co-chair of the Republican National Committee? Laura Trump, his daughter-in-law. It's the absurdity, but it proves, though, a very important point. when Donald Trump Jr. on the ellipse said it's no longer the Republican Party, it's the Donald Trump Party, he was absolutely correct.
Do you see this New York flip in any way as reflecting a repudiation of Trump, the way you've just sort of suggested?
No, both Trump and Biden were asked not to campaign. Neither the Republican nor the Democrat wanted the national figures in. I don't think that will be the case in the election in November. But for now, I think it was a very localized election. You had a man with a high name recognition, former three-term congressman, versus a woman who has a local office, had no real recognition. And frankly, the issue of Trump and Biden didn't really come up. The issue of immigration came up, and the Republicans tried to hang around him that he had been soft on the immigration policy. And if you listen to the Republicans this morning, they're saying he ran as if he were a Republican, which is not true. But as I like to say, Mark, don't confuse people with the facts.
The polling that has Joe Biden underwater is interesting in that it really varies from poll to poll. And The Economist did a piece that jumped out at me related to just that if you look at polling on Biden and national polling on Trump, the polling that is not that reliable, I mean, they do, you look at verifiability and you look at the pedigree of these various polls and you can figure out which ones, have sampling that's more accurate, have essentially they employ a kind of polling strategy that gives you a more accurate result from, you can distinguish those from others that do not. Anyway, the polls that have a better pedigree and more accurate, they show Trump and Biden in a dead heat. Those with a less dependable pedigree show Trump ahead by an average of 6 percentage points. Again, these are national polls. Now, I'll remind everybody that on some level, polling doesn't matter nationally because you only care about swing states in this ridiculous system that features the Electoral College. But I'm wondering if you can speak to Biden's general situation on voter happiness and displeasure with Biden, especially as we begin to get into the real political season.
Look, the answer comes from the special counsel, Mr. Hur, who included a line in his evaluation saying that Joe Biden had done nothing wrong and there was no indictment pending, so forth, but who pointed out that he is an older gentleman who has memory lapses. And that is what is concerning. That is what Speaker Johnson emphasized this morning in his press conference. That is what Donald Trump is emphasizing. That is why Democrats are concerned, and legitimately so. But I have to deal on a very pragmatic basis with this. Donald Trump is, unless something unforeseen happens, is going to be the Republican nominee, and Joe Biden is going to be the Democratic nominee. And we are going to confront two men, for all intents and purposes, 80 years old, less for Trump a few years, who are running against each other for president. Look, the simple truth is, whoever we elect, the vice presidential candidate on both tickets may well be the next president of the United States. Ask any insurance person dealing in life insurance about the actuary table. It's a fascinating moment, but I do not believe that if Joe Biden is able to run, that he will run. He will not withdraw as a candidate for president, and the Democrats are going to have a ticket of Biden and Harris.
Just to the point, because I wanted to follow up on a comment, the reason I didn't specify polls is it gets a little bit into the weeds, although what I'll do is I will link to the Economist story.
Good.
And you can see for yourself what I'm talking about. I'm giving you the essence of the Economist story when it comes to polling, where they literally aggregate these polls, and then you see in...
I've read it.
Yeah.
But I always remind you of President Landon and President Dewey and President Humphrey. The polls at this point, so far out, just have no impact. I can tell you on issues, more people are with Biden than are with Trump. And that is going to make a profound difference in terms of the election. but it also will matter who the vice presidential nominee is, and I'm convinced of that as well.
It also matters when the poll is taken. In total,
right.
13 polls have been conducted in 2024 by firms in this group. The group is from 538, and here the pollsters at their highest tier, meaning the most dependable, very good poll.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, have
Donald
run
Trump
polls
has
only
dates in,
sporadically.
Donald Trump has dates in court this week that are going to be of tremendous implication. Mr. Smith,
his NATO remarks. I mean,
yes.
My advice to both of these camps would be keep your candidates quiet.
Okay, but you can't do that with Joe Biden. He's the president of the United States. And so far, his faux pas this last week was to confuse the president of Mexico and the president of Egypt. And a big deal was made about it, but nobody seemed to want to talk, on the Republican side anyway, about Donald Trump confusing Nikki Haley with Nancy Pelosi.
Nikki Haley and Erdogan, he's confused. I mean, he's...
And did you know Mitterrand is still alive and is president of France?
Right. I mean this is, again.
This is a problem the American people face.
Right. John, you're so good on politics and the politics of the Senate and the politics of the House. Can you just give us a sense of control of those bodies and what party is likely to regain or lose on the Senate and House sides?
First of all, in the Senate, the real loser this week is Mitch McConnell. Here he crafted, along with others, in a bipartisan way, a border compromise, and it never went anywhere. And I think it's very important to understand that who the Republican leader is in the Senate is critical. And we also know that Donald Trump doesn't like Mitch McConnell anymore. So Mitch McConnell's days as leader, it seems to me, are numbered. The odds are, if you believe the numbers, that the Republicans do have a shot at taking back the Senate. I don't think we can determine that for sure until we know who the candidates are state by state. You'll recall that prior to the last election, I said it all depended on candidates, and I was right. I mean, not that I'm right all the time, but it's a question of whether or not a candidate has credibility. I believe the Democrats are going to take the House. I think they're going to take it substantially. When I say, I think at least by 10, 15 votes. And Hakeem Jeffries will become the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Why? Johnson is not only one of the most ineffective speakers we've ever had, but he can't control his own ranks. So it's a serious look.
Well, on questions of competence, the GOP is not even in the game. I mean, they're clearly an incompetent, chaotic party. And you can take issue with a lot of Democratic policies, but they seem, relative to the GOP, they seem competent. I mean, at least
you're
they're
absolutely
able to
right, and that's how the American people are going to have to judge it.
Sadly, that's not always the way it is judged. But let me ask you about the Senate side. Are there seats vulnerable on the Senate side on the part of the Democrats?
No, there aren't. It's a very interesting question. There aren't enough Democrats where there would make a difference. That is to say, you have some, like Tester in Montana, who is being seriously challenged. But again, until we know who the challengers are, it's hard to assess each race. You made a very interesting observation, Mark, and a correct one. And that is that in the presidential race, it matters about the Electoral College. It matters who carries the swing states. All the money in the presidential campaign is going to be spent on those swing states. And unlike Hillary Clinton, who did not campaign in those swing states, some of them, and lost them, which cost her the presidency, even though I would remind people she won the popular vote, there is no doubt in my mind that who the nominees are will matter. Now, look, in Arizona, Kari Lake has just been endorsed by the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee. Kari Lake being elected to the United States Senate seems highly improbable to me.
She came within 10 percentage points, I think, last time. Kristen Sinema,
that was for governor, where she's an identified person. We don't know whether Sinema is going to run as an independent candidate or not. We aren't 100% sure who the Democrat is going to be. But I'm suggesting to you right now, if I were a betting man, I would not put money, if I were a Republican, on Kari Lake.
The seat that everybody knows will go, the Democrats will lose this seat, is West Virginia, right?
That's
where
correct. Joe Manchin is
Joe
out,
Manchin was the Democrat.
and and I don't know whether he's going to run as a third-party candidate. That's highly disputed at this point, but he is bowing out. And there in West Virginia, there is no real substantive Democratic leadership. So you're right on that. But look, we can go state by state and take a look. The variations here are considerable. And so we'll just have to wait and see who the nominees are. Ask me when I know who the nominees are from the states, and I can give you an appraisal.
Okay.
Same thing applies in the House. There are a number of House races which depend on who the candidates are. And so we really have to wait and see. But if I were a betting man, I would bet that the Democrats will take the House. I think that trend is clear. In the Senate, it's far more problematic. And it depends on the Senate leadership. Will Mitch McConnell continue to be the leader of the Senate? He controls a lot of money. And who is he going to put his money behind? I mean, there are all of these issues. And then you have the disputes that are taking place by his leadership over his own position. So my answer is ask me in July, and we'll have a better idea who the candidates are and where the money is going to go.
Sure. Now to the Middle East. It's asked by Edward Lee in a super chat. Will Egypt attack the IDF, which is the Israeli Defense Force, if they invade Rafah?
No, Egypt will not attack Israel. They need Israel. I'll tell you what the concern is. The Palestinians from Rafah have no place to go. Will they go into Egypt? And you have to understand, yesterday, General Sisi, President Sisi, has ordered that border beefed up. He doesn't want the Palestinians coming into Egypt. Why? Because he's afraid Hamas, which aligns itself with the Muslim Brotherhood, who are his arch enemies. So the Palestinians are left with nothing. But I can tell you one thing that I feel very strongly, and people may disagree with me, but I don't think I'm wrong. The issue is not what deal is struck or what compromise is struck. There has to be a recognition of Israel's permanence. If Iran, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, various factions of the Palestinian movement that control the West Bank, if they can agree once and for all that Israel has a right to exist, then the existential threat is gone. Do you know, Mark, I was thinking about it. There's no other nation in the world whose very right to exist is denied except for Israel. So from the Israeli point of view, and this is left, right, and center, they aren't happy with Netanyahu. I think Netanyahu's days as prime minister are numbered. But as long as the war goes on, and as long as the Palestinians don't give in some way recognition, I don't think Israel has much choice. And that is a serious problem because we have hung our policy on the concept of a two-state solution. Has anybody heard Hamas talking about a two-state solution? No. They talk about the destruction of Israel. Anybody hear Iran talking about a two-state solution? No. And look what is happening in the north. Hezbollah is firing rockets into the north. We had a casualty yesterday that was announced. And that's a serious problem because Hezbollah isn't interested in recognition of Israel. So I hate to say it, and believe me, it pains me to say it. The issue here is not the Palestinians. It is the recognition of Israel's right to exist. I personally believe that if there were universal acceptance of Israel's right to exist, territory wouldn't be an issue. The Israelis would be much more forthcoming.
I mean, there have been deals on the table prior to this that
Palestinians have never accepted them.
It's a very tough situation
what do you do with Hamas?
there that's
really
made now.
And truly, what do you do with a terrorist organization that announces up front, we want to destroy you? Do you notice that in all of these negotiations, there is no one speaking directly on Egypt's relationship with Hamas? They may serve as a middleman, but they want nothing to do with Hamas. Remember that General Sisi, now President Sisi, succeeded his predecessor, who was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, who was overthrown by the army. So it's a tangled web we weave.
Yeah. And of course, the United Nations agency that looked the other way while Hamas
they didn't look the other way. They didn't look down. It was underneath the UNRWA headquarters. which was the command and control center for Hamas.
And you believe that they certainly knew it was there?
Well, if you believe they didn't, I have a bridge made out of gold I would like to sell you.
They're actually,
cheap.
it's suggested that staffers with UNRWA actually were part of that October 7th.
It's not suggested, it's a fact. Why do you think there was a cutoff of funds by many in Western Europe to UNRWA? But do you understand what a travesty it is and what a tragedy it is that even a United Nations agency, which was pledged to neutrality, and by the way, this is not the first time something like this has happened. It's happened in previous incarnations of conflict. So the Israelis, even the Israelis on the left, who are critical of Netanyahu, understand the immediate danger. And the problem is, why do they keep talking about a two-state solution? Everyone's trying to find a political path to follow. I'm telling you, and you can disagree with me, and listeners can argue with me, and I'm sure they will, nothing will satisfy Hamas or Iran or Islamic Jihad except for the destruction of Israel.
I mean,
and that is what they face.
Yeah.
I hate to say it.
And with that, sadly, we must wrap up.
Why? Don't you understand? No, wait. Let me just point something out before you wrap me up on Valentine's Day. Tying it with a red bow and a kiss.
You are so loved here. You should see the love in the chat. You should go back. It'll make you feel good.
This week, everybody should understand, isn't over, and Donald Trump is really on the hot seat. He's going to be in court dealing with the question of his own conduct in paying off a call girl, if you will. He is going to face the situation on Friday, where he's already adjudged as having cheated in New York in the real estate market. And so the issue is not his guilt or innocence, but what would the penalty be? Mark, it could be $300 million. He could be banned from ever conducting business in New York. His sons, Eric and Donald, are they going to be banned? And let me point out to you, that $300 million would be better spent supporting the Mark Thompson program, even a fraction of it. But I'm not saying it to be humorous, but I'm saying it to be factual. When we talk next Wednesday, what will the legal status be? And remember, Mr. Smith has been asked by the Supreme Court to submit an argument on why Donald Trump should not be allowed immunity, blanket immunity, for his years as president. The Supreme Court is on the spot. The American people will have to think, but you know who's really on the spot in all of this? The Republican Party. How much of the Trump weight can they carry? And let's assume for a minute that Donald Trump is found guilty of everything. I'm going to make that presumption. What does the Republican Party do then? Because the MAGA Republicans believe this is all a put-up job by the Biden administration. So we've got a fascinating time ahead. And it is, I think, one of the most incredibly interesting moments in the history of American politics. One more last thing, then I promise I'll leave you. Look at what our European allies are saying about Donald Trump and his approach to NATO. And do you know there is a law on the books that you can't withdraw from NATO without Senate consent? But you know what Donald Trump can do if he's president? He'll nickel and dime them. He'll figure out ways of getting around it. And that is another significant question.
Well,
I know we could go on all day, and you want me to leave you, so I will.
There was no formal appropriation for the wall money, and he just jacked it right out of the Pentagon.
Yeah,
I mean, he doesn't work in the same way. He basically bullies his way through government. I was just looking at all the different, because I'm thinking to myself, I think he's been banned from a lot of stuff. As you were saying that his business will be banned from doing business in New York, and essentially you're seeing a dismantling of Trump Inc. Because he was banned, as you recall, with the $25 million settlement in the Trump University deal. He was banned from, ever setting up any kind of academic institution ever again. He paid out $25 million. That's a bit of what he defrauded those poor souls who enrolled in Trump University. And then, of course, the maybe more galling, just because it involved a cancer charity in children.
Yes.
He defrauded that charity, and then his organization was banned from doing charity work or setting up any kind of charitable organization in the state of New York. So these are all things, by the way, some of which were detailed prior to him winning in 2016. I mean, I was screaming this stuff from the rooftops. This isn't some secret we've just uncovered.
Do facts matter? And let me ask you, if you served in the military, what do you think of the attack on Nikki Haley's husband, which is not a one-shot deal? This is similar to John McCain. Do you remember when Trump attacked McCain, we said, that's the end of Donald Trump. But it turns out that the party of John McCain no longer exists. The party of Bob Dole no longer exists. I would even suggest to you the party of Ronald Reagan no longer exists.
No,
what
that's
exists now
true.
is the party of Donald Trump.
And is it the Gold Star families the Gold Star family members that he basically flipped the bird to? Remember they spoke passionately and emotionally about having lost their son in battle, and Donald Trump and held up a Constitution. I don't know. I think his his smearing of these families while he hugs the flag, and yet if you talk to those who attend these various MAGA rallies, they are impressed by the way he hugs the flag. One of them actually said that. I mean, if this
No, the one I loved, Mark, is the woman who I heard interview who said, "God sent us Donald Trump, and we believe in God and Trump." Can you imagine?
Well,
I know that
I
God
just understand
sent
how
you
God
to
sent
this,
Trump, but didn't God send Biden and God sent Rothmann and God sent Thompson? I mean, it's not like God just had one special delivery and then he was on to the next galaxy. I mean,
Don't tell Donald Trump that.
You buy in for everything or you buy in for nothing. You can find him on Around the Political World with John Rothmann, his podcast. He joins us. I Love John is the sticker that is up there right now. So
Thank
wow,
you.
John.
And happy Valentine's Day. And may all of our loves come true.
Oh, that's sweet. John Rothmann, everybody. Thanks,
Kim
John.
McAllister, did you hear that?
Kim McAllister. I think he's got a thing for you, Kim. Very
The Mark
nice.
Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.